Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. At dawn on 500 acres of Texas dirt, a lone farmer finds a glossy envelope on his porch. An HOA wants his land. What follows isn't just a battle for property, it's war. Sabotage, drones, and courtroom drama collide in a gripping fight to save a legacy rooted deep in the soil. There's a certain kind of peace that settles over 500 acres of farmland before the sun climbs high enough to remind you that Texas doesn't mess around. I'd been up since before 5, moving slow but steady, checking the irrigation lines, rattling feed bins, watching a pair of hawks circle over the hayfield like they had something to prove. Same routine I've followed for years. The same silence, the same dirt under my boots. My granddad always said, "The land don't lie, people do. Dirt never does." That morning, I believed it more than ever. Then I found the envelope. It was waiting on the top step of my porch like a rattlesnake in a paper disguise. Glossy white, stamped with the pretentious gold crest of Eagle Hollow Estates HOA. I didn't need to open it to know the stench of suburban arrogance was going to waft out the second I broke the seal, but I did anyway. Because I'm a Reeves. We face things. Inside was a letter, typed in that smug legalese that always sounds like it was written by a real estate agent with delusions of power. HO Eagle Hollow Estates hereby proposes the purchase of your farmland at a rate of $100,000 with relocation assistance and logistical support. This offer reflects the evolving needs of the community and the underutilization of your current property's potential. I stared at it for a full minute. Then I laughed. I don't mean a chuckle. I mean an honest, wheezing, gut-level laugh that made my ribs ache. My family's farm, the land my grandfather claimed after coming home from the war in 1943, the same land that raised 4 generations of Reeves men and women, offered up for $100,000 like I was hawking a busted-up lawnmower on Craigslist. They could have at least thrown in a gift basket. I went inside, poured myself a cup of bitter coffee that had been sitting on the burner too long, and sat down at the kitchen table with the letter. The offer wasn't just insulting, it was surgical. Calculated. I knew damn well what they were doing. Eagle Hollow Estates hadn't existed a year ago. The land west of my fence line used to be mesquite and prickly pear and wildflowers until some city slicker development firm scraped it raw and slapped down luxury townhomes with infinity driveways and fake brick facades. The type of place where a homeowners association runs the show like a second-rate dictatorship. Their president, a bleach-blonde banshee named Karen Whitmore, introduced herself last summer by knocking on my front gate and asking if I could keep the tractor noise to a minimum on weekends. I told her she was welcome to come plow the east, field herself if she wanted a say in when it got worked. She didn't take the joke well. Now here she was, crawling back in on paper, dressed up in lawyer speak. $100,000. For 500 acres with active water rights, permanent fencing, grazing fields, and 2 barns older than her HOA. Not to mention the stock, the soil quality, and the fact that this land was registered with the county as a historical family agricultural estate. I stood up, walked outside, and stared at the hills. My hills. Hills I'd busted my back and bled into for 3 decades. Hills where my son took his first steps, where my wife and I buried our old blue heeler under the cottonwood. You don't sell roots like that, you fight for them. But the real kick came 2 nights later when I made the mistake of attending the monthly county planning meeting. I figured I'd go listen, maybe get a sense of how deep the HOA had its claws into local politics. It was held in the community center down in Gunter. Cheap chairs, bad coffee, and a folding table with name tags. That's where Karen made her move. She strolled up to the podium like a preacher ready to save souls and launched into a full PowerPoint presentation titled The Future of Eagle Hollow, Integrating Green Space and Community Wellness. Slide after slide showed walking trails, meditation gardens, even a little fake lake with paddle boats. And smack in the middle of all that fantasy, my damn farm, colored in pale green, labeled Proposed Ecological Park Zone. She never mentioned me by name, never said the word Reeves. But she pointed to the map, smiled that politicians smile, and said, "Some transitional properties are still in negotiation, but we expect to reach community harmony soon." I walked out before the meeting ended. I didn't say a word. Didn't have to. Every eye in the room followed me like I was already a ghost, just a shadow of dirt they planned to sweep away. When I got back to the house, I pulled out the same box of deeds and war medals I keep under my bed. I laid the letter next to my grandfather's discharge papers, and for a long moment just stared at them side by side. One was earned, the other was demanded. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I figured the HOA would simmer down after I ignored their little monopoly money offer. Maybe they'd move on to complaining about porch paint colors or the height of someone's hedges. But no, Karen Whitmore wasn't the type to take silence as a no. She took it as a challenge, and 2 mornings after that planning meeting, she showed up on my land. Not alone, of course. She brought a pair of private security goons with her, matching polos, mirrored sunglasses, and that blank stare that says, "I get paid too much to think and not enough to care." They parked their black SUV right outside my gate like they were staging a raid on a meth lab instead of visiting a cornfield. I was elbow deep in grease trying to fix the hay baler's gearbox when I heard the crunch of gravel. Wiping my hands on a rag, I walked over and found Karen standing just inside my fence line, like she owned the place. I didn't invite her past the gate. She didn't wait for an invitation. She smiled that high-gloss realtor smile of hers. "Mr. Reeves, we're giving you a second opportunity to consider the proposal." I leaned against the post and crossed my arms. "It's a hard no, just like it was in the letter." Her smile didn't twitch. "You're an intelligent man. Surely you can see that your property no longer fits the future of this area. We're trying to create something beautiful, cohesive, safe." "Safe?" I blinked at her. "You planning to pave over the cows or just make 'em wear vests?" One of the guards shifted his weight. Karen took a step closer. "This doesn't have to be difficult. You're not a young man anymore, Mr. Reeves. You should be thinking about legacy, about what's best for your grandson. Wouldn't it be better to pass on cash instead of a lawsuit?" That's when I realized this wasn't a conversation. It was a warning wrapped in sugar. I didn't respond. I just looked at her long enough for her to feel it. Then I turned around and walked back to my baler. They were gone 10 minutes later. But the pressure wasn't. By the end of the week, I received a certified letter from the County Environmental Oversight Office. According to the envelope, a formal complaint had been filed stating that my irrigation system might be compromising aquifer integrity and contributing to runoff violations. Runoff. I use drip irrigation and natural containment ditches designed by my dad 40 years ago. I haven't changed a damn thing. But suddenly, I was flagged for review. 2 days after that, the Department of Water Resources sent me another notice, this time about a potential investigation into my well permits. Preliminary evaluation suggests overuse beyond designated agricultural thresholds. Never mind the fact that my well has been grandfathered in since the 50s and draws from a confined aquifer that doesn't even connect to theirs. It didn't take a genius to figure it out. The HOA had friends in the right places, or enough money to create them. Meanwhile, the contractors I'd scheduled to reseal the east fence canceled on me. Every last one of them. Said they were booked up. When I offered to wait a few weeks, they got weird. One guy muttered something about not wanting to get entangled in neighborhood politics. Another straight up told me, "I can't afford to lose my Eagle Hollow clients, man." Sorry. It wasn't just pressure, it was quarantine. A slow, silent ring closing around my farm. Then came the kicker. Through one of my older ag buddies at the county co-op, I found out that the HOA was getting grant money. Not just any money. Environmental revitalization funds, clean and green incentive grants offered by a so-called Ecological Advancement Fund affiliated with the county. On paper, the fund was all about restoring green space, repurposing land for public benefit, blah, blah, blah. I did some digging. The Ecological Advancement Fund wasn't a county initiative at all. It was a private nonprofit based out of Austin, run by 3 people. One of them, Karen Whitmore's son-in-law. The whole thing was a front. A fake tree hugger operation funneling grant money into HOA projects under the guise of public good. And guess what? My farm was already listed in their upcoming project portfolio as a targeted zone for ecological conversion without my consent, without a word. I sat there in my truck, holding the printed portfolio in my hands, staring at a color-coded map that showed my fields marked in bright green under the header Eagle Hollow Expansion Phase 2. They'd already planned the funeral. They were just waiting for me to lie down and die. The first time I saw one of their little signs, it was leaning against my pond like it belonged there. White plastic staked into the soil, printed with those same damn gold trim letters. Future site of Eagle Hollow Estates expansion. just sitting there bold as brass, like my land had already been bought and paved, like I didn't still wake up every day to mend it, feed it, work it with my own damn hands. I yanked it out, snapped it over my knee, and threw the pieces into the back of my pickup. I figured some overeager intern or HOA brown-noser got ahead of themselves. Annoying, sure, but not worth losing sleep over. I was wrong. It wasn't a one-off. Over the next week, I found 5 more. One in the hayfield, one behind the barn, even one zip-tied to my back gate. All of them the same message: expansion coming soon. It was like a bad joke that just kept getting repeated by someone who didn't know when to shut up. And then the leaflets started falling from the sky. It was a Thursday morning. I was out walking the fence line with my grandson, Aiden. He'd moved in with me for the summer after dropping out of college. Wanted to get his head straight, as he put it. We were halfway down the pasture when something buzzed overhead. A drone, sleek, black, humming like a lazy hornet. Before I could grab my shotgun, the thing zipped over us and released a puff of paper like confetti. Leaflets, dozens of them. I picked one up. White background, green font, clean graphic design like a tech startup ad. At the bottom, a QR code. At the top, sign the petition to protect our environment. Relocate the industrial farming operation. Industrial farming. That's what they were calling a 500-acre family plot with 4 tractors, 12 cows, and a John Deere older than my knees. I crushed the leaflet in my fist. We started finding them all over the property, wedged into the mailbox, slipped under the barn door, left under windshield wipers like parking tickets from hell. It didn't stop there. 2 nights later, I was jolted awake by the sound of metal scraping. I grabbed my rifle, pulled on my boots, and headed out. Down near the eastern fence line, someone had sliced through a 10-foot section of barbed wire, clean cut. The cows were already wandering out, confused, noses twitching. Took me 2 hours and a lot of cursing to wrangle them back in. That morning, I went out and bought motion sensors, trail cameras, and a few extra rolls of razor wire. It wasn't paranoia if they were actually coming for you. And sure enough, the cameras paid off. 3 days later, just before midnight, one of the cameras caught a figure creeping along the property edge. Male, medium build, black hoodie. He stopped by the pond, took something out of a duffel, and drove a fresh future expansion sign into the soil. Then he stood there, admiring his work like some kind of twisted artist, before turning and heading back toward a waiting car. When I froze the video and zoomed in, I saw it. The glint of a patch on his jacket sleeve. Eagle Hollow Security. He wasn't just a neighborhood busybody. He was on their payroll. I brought the footage to the sheriff's department the next morning. The deputy at the desk gave me a long sigh, like I'd just handed him a dead raccoon. "Mr. Reeves, I'd recommend you speak with their HOA board directly. This kind of thing can usually be resolved without escalating to law enforcement." I told him I wasn't escalating, I was documenting. The look he gave me said he didn't believe there was a difference. That afternoon, I drove down to the Gunter Feed and Supply to pick up new fencing nails. While I was there, 2 men in polo shirts whispered as I passed. I heard the word toxic. Another guy I knew, Toby, a guy who'd done septic repairs for me before, looked away when I said hello, wouldn't meet my eyes. The message was clear. I wasn't just under attack. I was being isolated. They weren't trying to fight me. They were trying to make me so unwanted, so cut off, that I'd sell just to get my life back. But they'd underestimated something important. I've never in my life responded to pressure the way they wanted me to. And I wasn't about to start now. When your enemy starts dropping leaflets from drones and slicing through your fence in the dead of night, you stop thinking like a farmer and start thinking like a soldier. I'd never wanted to fight anyone. My whole life was built on long days, decent work, and minding my own damn business. But now it was clear. These people weren't going to stop. And I wasn't going to back down, so I changed gears. It started with the archives, the kind of dusty paperwork most folks never think to look at until they're dying or selling. I hauled the old metal lockbox from under my bed, my granddad's records, dad's notes, folders stuffed with well permits, zoning maps, livestock logs, and letters from the state dating back to the 60s. I laid it all out on the kitchen table. A battlefield of yellowed paper and ink. My grandfather had documented everything. Every repair to the irrigation system, every inspection, every approval from the county, and most importantly, the deed that marked our land as a historically registered agricultural site, filed back in 1971. meaning it couldn't be reclassified for development without approval from the State Historical Commission and the County Board, which, surprise, surprise, Eagle Hollow hadn't even tried to pursue. But that was just the beginning. Aiden, my grandson, had been watching all this play out like a man seeing the real world for the first time. He'd always been the smart one, tech-savvy, curious, a little too idealistic for his own good. But something about the HOA's bullying had flipped a switch in him. "What if we made this place untouchable?" he asked me one evening, sitting out by the back porch. Like, officially, scientifically. I stared at him. "You suggesting I turn the farm into a science project?" "No," he grinned. "I'm suggesting we turn it into a research site. And damn if the kid didn't mean it. Turns out, the University of Texas had a public partnership program for rural technological implementation, Agriculture 2.0, smart farming, precision yield studies. Aiden had a buddy in the engineering department, pulled a few strings, and suddenly we had a contact interested in using our land for field testing. I'll admit, I had no idea what the hell soil telemetry meant, but I was willing to learn. Within 3 weeks, we installed solar panels along the western ridge, connected to a power monitor, soil sensors that tracked moisture and pH across every crop zone, a cloud-connected system that monitored water usage, weather shifts, and fertilizer saturation, GPS tags for our aging John Deere tractors, which Aiden found oddly adorable. The university sent a grant. A small team visited to document our setup. We signed a cooperative agreement that officially listed the farm as a technological agricultural research zone tied directly to the state university system. Legally, that made us part of an academic research network. Any attempt to disrupt or acquire the property without consent from the university or a state-level review, grounds for injunction. Aiden printed a copy of the signed agreement and pinned it right next to the front door like a badge of honor. It wasn't just about paperwork anymore. We were building something new from the old bones of the farm, resurrecting it into a future-proof shield, one they hadn't seen coming. But I didn't stop there. I started assembling what Aiden called a legal fortress. I contacted a property attorney from Dallas, a no-nonsense woman named Tamika Rhodes, who'd made her name shredding eminent domain abuse cases. She was meaner than a rabid bobcat and twice as fast. When I laid out what the HOA had been doing, she didn't blink. "We'll hit them with harassment, malicious intent, property interference, and fraud," she said, flipping through my documents like a blackjack dealer. "They've been sloppy, arrogant. That's good for us." At her advice, we began compiling an official case file. Videos, photos, documents, sworn statements. Aiden built a digital archive, cloud-based and encrypted. We kept hard copies too. Hell, we even printed one on acid-free archival paper and stashed it in the storm cellar. We weren't just holding the line anymore. We were arming the walls. And in the middle of all this, I started to feel something I hadn't felt in weeks. Control. For the first time since that smug envelope showed up on my porch, I wasn't just reacting. I was preparing, strategizing, getting ahead. Of course, I knew this wouldn't stop them. People like Karen Whitmore didn't quit when they lost ground. They just regrouped and came at you sideways. But now, at least, I had teeth. A war isn't always fought with bullets. Sometimes it's fought with whispers, leaks, and little fires you don't even see until the smoke chokes you. I didn't know what to expect when I sent Jared in. He was a sharp kid, smart, composed, and more patient than I'll ever be. Law student from Denton, part-time intern for my attorney Tamika, and willing to play dirty if it meant exposing the truth. I vouched for him personally, and he joined the HOA as a community liaison volunteer, just another eager young face smiling his way into their Zoom calls and board meetings. The stuff he started sending me made my stomach turn. Meeting minutes marked confidential that discussed my non-cooperative status. PowerPoint slides laying out phased intimidation strategies. Actual bullet points like pressure via regulatory stress, saturate mailboxes with noise complaints, and consider psychological deterrence or grandson. One recording stopped me cold. It was Karen's voice. Calm, smug, casual, like she was ordering lunch. If he won't listen, start pushing on the grandson. These family types, they crack when the blood's on the table. No one wants to see their kid dragged through the mud. He'll fold. I'd been ready for legal tricks, even sabotage. But that was a declaration. The next day, Aiden got an official-looking letter addressed to legal guardian of Aiden Reeves, Jr. It claimed his prior minor traffic violation had raised concerns about his fitness to reside on agricultural property near residential zones. There were phrases like juvenile oversight consideration and pending community safety review. It was a bluff, but it was a good one. Looked real enough to scare the hell out of a 19-year-old who'd never even had a speeding ticket until he'd tried driving my beat-up pickup through town one night with a tail light out. He handed it to me without a word, his jaw tight. I called Tamika. She laughed once, real dry. This isn't just harassment anymore. This is targeted character assassination. Let's play hardball. That night, Aiden and I sat out on the porch, watching the dusk settle in like ash over the fields. "Why me?" he asked, voice low. "Why would they come after me? I'm just working here." "Because you're young," I said, "and because they think I'll break if they touch something I love." He nodded slowly, like that explanation didn't make it hurt any less. I posted the letter to my social media the next morning, captioned it with, "My grandson is being threatened by people who want to steal our land. This is what bullying looks like in 2025. By sunset, it had gone viral. Local papers picked it up, then regional, then national. Suddenly, people cared. Farmers across the state started tagging me. Parents, veterans. Hell, even a handful of HOA members from other neighborhoods, real ones, came out saying, "This isn't how you treat a family." Karen tried to counter it with a press release. Concerns were raised about the safety of minors on industrial use land near a school zone, but nobody was buying it. Aiden had never been within 100 yards of their precious Montessori Academy, and now they were on the defensive. Meanwhile, Jared kept feeding me gold. He sent over a screenshot from an encrypted HOA group chat. One message read, "If he's turning public, we need to be quiet. Cut back on field ops." Field operations, like they were running a black ops unit and not a cluster of bored retirees and uptight managers with control issues. Another chat message from someone labeled WW read, "We should have pushed the insurance angle." He's got outbuildings, right? That one got forwarded straight to Tamika, who filed a preemptive injunction against any property-related interference or arson-related risk. We were building a legal wall, brick by brick, and with Jared's intel, every brick came labeled with a name, a date, and a motive. I didn't sleep much that week. Too much rage under my ribs, too much fire behind my eyes. But for once, it wasn't fear keeping me awake. It was momentum. Courtrooms always smell like floor wax and slow death, like hope's been mopped up a few too many times. It was a hot Monday when we walked into the Grayson County Courthouse. I wore my cleanest denim shirt, the one with pearl snaps and no grease stains. Aiden came in a borrowed blazer. Tamika looked like a buzzsaw on heels, dark blue suit, hair pinned back like a weapon, and a briefcase that probably had more damage potential than a loaded shotgun. Karen was already seated when we arrived, flanked by her attorney, some boutique real estate firm from Plano, and 2 Eagle Hollow board members. She didn't look nervous. She looked bored, like this was just another coffee meeting with a side of condemnation. The charges we brought were civil for now. Harassment, attempted fraudulent rezoning, property interference, and intimidation. Tamika had filed over 300 pages of documentation, photographic, digital, testimonial. Our case was tight. Karen's team responded by claiming HOA had a reasonable interest in adjacent undeveloped properties for community welfare expansion. They used words like ecosystem compatibility, development integration, and my personal favorite, unresponsive. Landholding like I was a malfunctioning soda machine. But the meat of their defense came with a curveball. They were petitioning for a court injunction under a provision for a municipal ecological conversion, claimed the land's underuse posed a missed opportunity for community growth. That's when Tamika smiled, and when Tamika smiles in court, someone's about to bleed. She stood and called our first witness. "Mr. Jeffrey Morrell," she said. A balding man in khakis stood up from the gallery and walked to the stand. Karen blinked. Morrell used to be a property consultant for Eagle Hollow. He'd been mysteriously fired 6 months back. At the time, I didn't know why. Turns out, Jared did. Tamika began calmly. "Mr. Morrell, were you involved in the valuation of Mr. Reeves's farm?" "Yes." "Can you tell the court how the valuation was determined?" He paused, looked at Karen, then answered, "I was asked to prepare a report that would support an acquisition offer of under $200,000. Tamika leaned in. "Asked by whom?" "Karen Whitmore." Karen's lawyer objected, overruled. And was that valuation supported by market data? Number, it was creative. Explain. I was told to use depreciation models from adjacent rural lots with no water access, to omit the historical designation, and to list the property as fallow, even though it's in active use. Silence. Dead silence. Karen went pale but held her posture like it was frozen in epoxy. Tamika let it sit, then brought in the second witness. Your Honor, the defense claims they are unaware of intimidation or interference. I'd like to introduce a former employee of Eagle Hollow Security. His name was Diego Navarro, a 23-year-old who used to walk the perimeter at Eagle Hollow and occasionally patrol the edges of my land. Tamika played a recording. Karen's voice again, clipped and clear. Just make him uncomfortable. Lights at night, signs, mailers. We want him annoyed, not injured. Understand? Navarro nodded. That was a meeting in February. We were given pre-printed signs. I helped put up 3. Karen's attorney scrambled. Objected on lack of authentication. Overruled again. The courtroom shifted. Even the judge leaned forward. Tamika turned to the bench. Your Honor, the plaintiff has demonstrated targeted manipulation of land value, intentional harassment, misuse of private security, and fraudulent intent to obtain property. Then she paused, just for effect, and said, "And it gets worse." She dropped a packet on the evidence table. Inside, screenshots from the so-called Ecological Advancement Fund, the fake nonprofit Karen had used to apply for green space grants. Turns out, that fund had been siphoning HOA dues into a shell account operated by her son-in-law. Every community improvement project had a 10% markup, money that circled right back to her family. Embezzlement. On public record. Karen's face finally cracked. And that was before we even got to the screenshots Jared pulled from the HOA group chat, showing Karen bragging about teaching the old man a lesson and letting the grandson feel the heat. At that point, it didn't matter what legal gymnastics her daughter's team tried. The judge called a recess. Outside, reporters had already gathered. Word had spread fast. Tamika stood beside me on the courthouse steps. "Now we go for the jugular," she said, sunglasses glinting. "Next hearing, we push for dissolution." I just nodded. There was nothing left to say. The mask had come off. Karen had played her last card. And we were still standing. They always say justice is slow, but when it hits, it lands like a hammer. The second hearing was packed. Not just lawyers and HOA brass, but locals, farmers from neighboring counties, journalists, even a few folks from the university who'd helped install my soil sensors. People came out not just to watch, but to stand behind something. The courtroom smelled like anticipation. Tamika opened with a motion, petition to dissolve Eagle Hollow Estates HOA under grounds of organized property harassment, civil fraud, misappropriation of funds, and coordinated intimidation. She said it flatly, like she was asking the court to pass the salt. Karen wasn't present this time. She claimed medical complications due to stress. Her attorney sat alone, looking like he was already drafting the resignation email in his head. Judge Crawford, a gray-haired man who looked more like a retired rancher than a district judge, flipped through our packet for a full 3 minutes before setting it down and clearing his throat. This court has reviewed documented harassment, private correspondence, financial mismanagement, false valuations, misuse of regulatory bodies, and attempted character attacks on minors. This behavior is not merely negligent, it is malicious, systemic, and incompatible with any legitimate civic organization. Then he dropped the gavel. Motion granted. The HOA was officially dissolved. Every board member was barred from serving in any similar capacity for a minimum of 10 years. Karen Whitmore, notably absent, had her name redacted from all further HOA-related documentation pending criminal investigation for fraud, conspiracy, and attempted coercion. That same afternoon, the sheriff's office issued warrants for 2 former HOA security staff. Diego's recordings had been verified by a third-party forensic team. By the time I got home, my phone was blowing up. News vans were parked down by the crossroads. Someone had made a TikTok of Tamika walking down the courthouse steps with the caption, "Texas just became a stand-your-ground for farmers." It hit 1 million views in 4 hours. But none of it felt real until the paperwork arrived in the mail 2 weeks later. A big manila envelope stamped from the Texas Office of Historical Preservation. Inside, confirmation that my land had been recertified as a protected private agricultural heritage site under state and university stewardship, meaning no zoning changes, no third-party claims, no HOA, no eminent domain, ever, unless a judge at the state level signs off. And good luck with that. After the mess Karen made, I held that letter in my hands and sat down in the field by the old cottonwood, same one my grandfather planted after the war. I didn't cry, not really, but my eyes burned in a way that had nothing to do with the wind. 3 days later, the county posted an official notice. Eagle Hollow Estates HOA accounts frozen, operations suspended, all future development halted until further court review. That weekend, I drove out to the edge of my land and welded together something I'd been working on in the shed. 6-foot steel letters, painted red, planted right along the easement fence where the road curves near the pond. Farm stands, HOA Falls. 2 simple sentences. Neighbors started honking when they passed. Aiden filmed a little walkthrough of the farm for the university's ag tech department, explained our moisture sensors, GPS trackers, even how we'd tied in solar battery storage. The university posted it as a model site for rural modernization. Comments started pouring in from farmers, students, even a few folks overseas asking how to replicate it. Tamika sent me one final message. She's facing charges, 7 counts, and 2 of those are felonies. Her real estate license is under review. More to come. I told her to send me the sentencing date. It's been 6 months since the courtroom doors slammed shut behind the last of them. Karen never came back to Eagle Hollow. Word is she's living in a condo near Dallas under house arrest while the feds comb through her finances. The day she lost her license, Tamika texted me a single word: revoked. The subdivision itself, what's left of it, is limping along without a spine. Some of the residents formed a co-op, stripped down all the HOA rules, and started planting wildflowers in their manicured medians. One even asked me to come speak at their community regrowth night. I passed, politely. Truth be told, I've had enough of microphones in courtrooms. I didn't fight to become a symbol. I fought because it was my land. But something changed, not just for me, for everyone. It started with a couple of high school kids asking if they could help out over the summer. Said their ag teacher wanted them to learn hands-on with a modern farm. Then came a small grant from the state to expand our soil testing program. Then the local library called. Could I host a talk about agricultural history? Before I knew it, the place was alive in a new way. Aiden stayed. He built a full tech rig in the barn, solar hubs, server backups, even a climate station on the ridge that pings data to the university every morning. He's planning to apply for a graduate program in environmental systems. We named the project after my grandfather. The Reeves Rural Resilience Initiative has a ring to it. Every week, we host kids from the county for what we call Saturday Soil School. They learn how to test water, use drones for crop scans, run numbers on irrigation flow. Last week, one of them looked at me and said, "I didn't know dirt could be this smart." Made me laugh so hard I had to sit down. I still wake early. Still feed the cattle, fix the fences, watch the clouds move across the hills like they're thinking deep thoughts. But now, there's more. More voices. More roots. We even started bottling our well water. Nothing fancy, just glass jugs for neighbors and friends. A kind of private label. Aiden wanted to call it HOA Tears. I said no. We settled on Cottonwood Reserve. Every time I walk past the big red sign by the road, farm stands, HOA Falls, I remember that peace isn't something you get handed. It's something you fight for, protect, maintain. And when I hear that old diesel rumble of the John Deere, I feel it again. Legacy. Alive. Stronger than ever.